James, welcome back to Vancouver.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back.
And you've been here for a few days this time.
Yeah, it's been a nice little stretch. All these funny pandemic cancellations, trying to like shoehorn them in. And yeah, I just played these 3 trio concerts for the Vancouver Recital Society. This great friend of mine, old friend, cellist, wonderful cellist, Beyond Sang, had asked me before, I guess it was before the 2019-2020 season, said, hey, do you happen to have like 3 days to come up to Vancouver to play these trios? I was like, yeah, great. 2 years later, we're finally doing them, or finally did them. So yeah, that was a nice chance to be here for a few days anyway.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for those, and we're really looking forward to your Beethoven Concerto.
Me too, very much.
And you've played this concerto before.
Yeah, I think I've probably played the Beethoven at this point more than anything. It's Beethoven, Mendelssohn, Tchaikovsky. They're all kind of in that range. But I think particularly just in recent years, Beethoven has sort of overtaken things. And, it was the big Beethoven anniversary year, got a little bit kind of messed up with COVID, but there were actually a few chances to play because, even when orchestras were doing really reduced numbers, it was like Beethoven was kind of the limit of the piece is kind of magical. You can do it with a big orchestra, you can do it with a fairly small orchestra, you can do it distanced. It's not easy, nothing is, but so yeah, I was able to do it a bunch over the last couple of years, and it's one of those pieces that every time is kind of it's an inspiring experience because it's a chance to bring a piece that means so much to me to other people.
That's fabulous. Now you have a special relationship with the Vancouver Symphony as well.
Yes, I'm lucky to say that I do.
You've been here a few times over the years, and especially it's important to kind of bookend what's happened in the last few years. It's already come up in our discussion about the pandemic. You were the first person to come here as a guest artist for the concerthall.ca, the digital concert hall that we had set up, with no audience present when you were being recorded.
Yeah, that was a really meaningful experience. I think that all performing arts organizations were just kind of grasping at straws, and no one could have blamed the VSO for saying, listen, we can't do anything. But the VSO did find a way to do something, and that meant more, I think, than people just in the Vancouver community can ever know. The resonance of any of these organizations that were able to find a way to work through that, that provided encouragement and inspiration across the entire industry. And I was really honored to come in for the first of those. And we had this great Bach Sibelius project over at the church, and then here in this building at the School of Music, we did this Beethoven septet in the Piatt Hall, and of course that was kind of hilarious with all the different restrictions. We had 8 people filling that entire room. I mean, it was like, hey, I think that part's a little slow. It was bizarre, but it worked because you get great musicians here at the VSO, and you get the desire to do it, and certainly everyone was really hungry at that point to do something, so we had our fun.
That's excellent. And now it's great because you started that season, and now you're closing what we're referring to as a recovery season, the first in-person season that we've had since the lockdown. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
It's really great. And during the time that there was the lockdown, I know that you had some other projects that developed too.
Yeah, I was, the first few months, of course, were very strange because there was really like nothing. So yeah, I ended up, it's funny to think like, why did you do that? But I sort of turned my home into a recording studio, and I made these films that were later released, the audio on CDs of all the Bach solo sonatas and partitas and the solo violin sonatas by Eugenie Zai. It was like I wanted to keep active, to keep kind of artistically engaged, and luckily as a violinist we've got this great repertoire that is complete for just a solo instrument. So that was Yeah, that was quite an experience. You know, I've got two little kids at home, and to just sort of have peace and quiet, and no street noise and no noise from the neighborhood. I was doing it all in the middle of the night, and it was just a really, really weird way to be spending time. But I'm happy that I did it. People are like, "Oh, are you going to do that again?" I'm like, "No, of course not. Why would I do that again?" But I think I gained a lot from it. I learned a lot artistically, as one always does, from sort of a deep dive into this repertoire. But also, it was really fun to learn all about how to record myself, and how to film myself, and how can you make a decent looking production on when you have like two iPhones, an old SLR camera, and like a $200 budget. Wow. So yeah, it's a learning process, but yeah, I was proud of it. Yeah,
So I'm holding the product of
that's
your
that's
time at home.
half of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How have you found it now that touring is resuming? How does it feel to be back out concertizing and playing for people? Is there any difference that you find in terms of audiences?
It's different everywhere you go. I found that audience recovery is very specific, not even regionally. It's more local than that. Just place to place. It makes sense when you think that in terms of how people have dealt with this entire terrible situation. It's like, well, everyone is just kind of doing the best they can and doing what they think is the right thing to do. We don't really know those answers, so everyone's doing it a little differently. Yeah, it's certainly been a curious year. Like last season, 2020, 2021, was really weird because there was not a whole lot going on. And what was happening was more often filmed rather than live. This last season, I booked myself a really, really heavy season, thinking there's a good chance that 25-30% will fall out. And really, kind of nothing has. Like, there were a couple shows, maybe 3-4 concerts the whole year. And partially that's been just lucky for me, that I've been in places where that's the time when they're doing concerts, and maybe a few weeks later they're shut down for this, that, or the other. But it's been great. I love my job. I love doing what I do, getting to share this music, play for people, and yeah, I think that there's been a real hunger for it. People have missed it, and that's been really touching and really encouraging as well. You hope as a musician, it's like, well, I hope that this means something to people. And I think we've learned in the industry that it really does. I mean, the outpouring of support and generosity from the public has been really touching, really moving to me. And this now, you talk about this VSO season as being sort of the season of recovery. I think there's been this wonderful feeling from audiences are hungry to get back to it, and musicians are certainly so eager to share as a way of sort of saying thank you, I suppose, to the people that didn't give up on us, and supported these organizations through the darkest of times.
Well, thank you for that. How is it feeling to work with other musicians and with conductors now? Is there a noticeable difference in attitude or anything changing?
Off the top of my head, I'd say no. It's just sort of like falling back into place a little bit. Yeah, I mean, if anything, there is this very consistent attitude of what I just mentioned, of people being really grateful to be able to do it. But honestly, it's funny. People were like, well, I'm sure now, you're learning not to take anything for granted. And it's like, well, didn't really take it for granted before, and the people that I enjoyed playing with were not people that were just like checking in with the time card and taking it for granted either. It's like you play with an orchestra like the Vancouver Symphony. It's like it's kind of it's kind of a nice thing to be like, oh, and everyone is super inspired now, but it's like, this orchestra is always inspired. Like, these are great players that they come and like night after night and do their thing, and I think that to overstate that now is a very special time runs the risk of selling short what it was before. No, in a way, it's a return to normal, and normal is special.
Couldn't agree with you more. In fact, we have more normalcy coming up in the season to come in 22-23, because 11 months from now, in May 2023, you're going to be back with the Vancouver Symphony.
Yeah.
And in fact, what you're going to be playing with the symphony then in 3 concerts, I'm making a point of this because you're actually going to play in a new venue for you, apparently.
I think so. It's down in Surrey, where I don't believe I've played with the VSO before. So
that's right. So we'll have 2 at the Orpheum, 1 in Surrey at the Bell Centre. And you're going to be playing a piece that has a real history with the VSO and with you, the Korngold Concerto.
Yeah, well, it's a really fun program that came together just out of kind of fun discussions between the artistic team and the conductor, wonderful conductor named Katarina Vincourt, who I've worked with before, and myself. We kind of came up with this idea to do both the Korngold Violin Concerto as well as the Bela Bartok Viola Concerto. So. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty heavy week for me, but it's going to be great fun. And yeah, as you mentioned, the Korngold is a piece that has a lot of special memories for me and the VSO, because I recorded the piece here with Bramwell Toby back in 2005, 2006, something like that, and that was a very, very special project that was nicely received, and I think the first time I played with the VSO was. It was like 96 or something. I think I played with the VSO on my 20th birthday, but it was this recording in a way that was like, it was such an intense experience. I think from that time, I really felt like part of the family, and that's been very special for me, to feel like when I come here that, of course I'm just, I'm a guest, but I feel like I'm kind of at home too, and I love that.
We're always happy to welcome you, James.
Thank you.
And also what's really interesting for people potentially who may not know about this, how is it to play a concerto on the violin and then a concerto on the viola in the same concert?
Well, it's a little tiring, but I do a fair amount of playing of in both instruments on the same program. Not so much like concertos on the same night, but often in a recital I may play something on the viola as well as on the violin. So switching back and forth is not a huge stressor for me, but the thing I'm really excited for in terms of the challenge of this program next year is that these pieces are both really technically involved and demanding and stylistically complementary but very different. So I'm going to really, on the different halves of that program, I'm going to really have to be 2 different people.
That's great. The other side to being 2 different people, I'm thrilled personally that you also continue to be both a soloist but also a chamber musician. And that seems to be something that you've chosen.
Well, it's certainly a big part of my life. I've been the director of the Seattle Chamber Music Society for, I think this is my 11th year. And in terms of the Summer Festival, which is coming up very soon, I first got to know the organization when I was invited out to play the summer of 1995. And I haven't missed a summer since. So chamber music is a huge part of my life, and certainly the Seattle Chamber Music Society is a big part of my life. And our 4-week summer festival, 2-week winter festival, we've been just expanding onto more and more. We've opened this wonderful center for chamber music in downtown Seattle, where we have year-round programs now, and our educational programs and outreach and master classes, and it's really, I to be completely honest, what we have done with our center there was to no small part inspired by what the VSO has done right here with the VSO School of Music. Seeing the kind of impact that an organization can have on the entire community, and the ways in which a broader approach to music saturation can really pay dividends. So we're proud of what we're doing there.
That sounds fabulous. James, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Really great to have you back in town.
Always good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.